Markets move. The world takes notice. This is Next Money Signal, your daily briefing for those who make financial moves that matter.
We hear so much about billion-dollar companies. You know, the ones starting with huge VC checks and all that buzz.
Right, the typical Silicon Valley narrative almost.
Exactly. But what about building it differently, like really differently? Today, we're diving into Kendra Scott's story. She's one of, only about 20 women in the U.S. to build a billion-dollar company from the ground up.
Yeah, quite an achievement. And she built a jewelry empire.
Our source for this is an article, How a Jewelry Hustler Built a Billion-Dollar Brand and What Most Founders Get Wrong. So our mission here is to pull out the key insights, especially how her approach was so unconventional.
Well, the first thing that jumps out is how she started. Just $500.
$500? Seriously?
Yep, $500 in a credit card. I mean, think about that compared to the multi-million-dollar seed rounds we hear about constantly. It's a totally different starting point.
It really is. And maybe even more surprising, she built the company for a whole decade, 10 years, with zero outside investors.
10 years? That's almost unheard of, especially for a brand that got so big.
So what was the secret sauce then? How do you grow like that independently?
Well, the article really points to her intense focus on profitability, specifically EBITDA.
Okay, EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So not just chasing sales figures.
Exactly. It wasn't about that top-line revenue number at all costs. She famously said something like, "You've got to have EBITDA, baby." That was core. Building something actually sustainable, you know?
Sustainable from day one, it sounds like.
Right. Which doesn't mean it was easy. I mean, the article mentioned she hit some rough patches.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like maxing out her line of credit. Just to keep the lights on, basically, in the early days.
Wow. Okay, so serious personal risk involved there. That takes guts.
Absolutely. When you don't have that cushion of investor cash, every decision counts. And you have to be incredibly resilient. It forces you to be lean.
And it seems like that difficult period, that focus, really paid off in the end.
It definitely did. Because the article highlights this turning point where investors, the same ones who weren't interested before,
Let me guess. They came knocking.
they were apparently begging to invest later on. It's such a testament to just building a solid, profitable business first. Let the results do the talking, right?
Totally. It flips the usual script of needing hype and funding before you have the solid results.
Exactly. Her story really shows the power of just tangible success. And the source pulls out a few key lessons from this.
Okay, let's get into those. What stood out?
Well, one big one is prioritizing that lean, profitable growth. Even if nobody's really noticing you yet, build a foundation.
That feels very counterculture to the grow fast, break things, get famous approach.
It really is. It suggests real validation comes from the business itself being strong, not just from external buzz. Another point was confidence.
Confidence in business settings.
Yeah, just the sheer power of believing in what you're doing, especially when facing rejection or tough negotiations later on. I can imagine that was key.
I bet. And there was a third lesson I liked. Something about preparation.
Oh, right. The strategic advantage of being incredibly prepared. There was that quote.
Surprise them with the homework they didn't expect you to do.
That's the one. It's about knowing your stuff inside and out. Substance over flash.
So if you tie it all together, her journey is almost like an alternative blueprint, isn't it?
Definitely. It shifts the focus away from just fundraising and hype, more towards grit, clarity, profit, and really strong execution.
Okay, so key takeaways. The power of profit from the get-go, resilience to push through the tough times, and being deeply prepared, believing in your plan.
Precisely. It's a good reminder that the loudest path isn't always the only one, or even the best one. Sometimes that quieter focus on fundamentals builds something truly lasting.
So as you think about this story, maybe consider this. How could focusing more on profitability, on solid execution, rather than just chasing growth or external nods, how might that change how you look at your own projects or even how you understand business success stories in general?